Chapter 20. Two people are better than one. When two people work together, they get more work done. When one person falls, the other person can reach out to help. But those who are alone, when they fall, have no one to help them. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 through 10. In the following months, I was so deep in the streets that it was no turning back. I grinded my last few kilos so hard, rock for rock, that I was practically living in Jasper now and rarely spent much time at home. Whenever I did come back to Forestdale, it was to spend time with Kat, who was at a point where she knew I would do what I wanted, so she either had to accept it or not. I hadn't seen or talked to Midnight since our encounter in Ena Ridge, but his name was still ringing enough in the streets for me to know he was still alive and still doing what he did best, getting money. There was no love lost between us as far as I'm concerned, but I had my own money to make and wasn't about to sit around trying to figure out how to get back on this good side. Friends come and friends go. During my time hustling down in Jasper, I found Bam to be a solid little nigga, and we gotten rather tight after spending many days sitting out on his mother's front porch selling rocks. Maybe even tighter than I was with Fly White, who lately had been mysteriously coming up missing a lot. Like today, me and Bam had been waiting hours for Fly White to get back to hold the spot down while I took Bam to pick up his car from his aunt's house in Central City Projects. What's taking his ass so long? I asked Bam. It was already 4 in the evening, and he was supposed to have been back by 2. Man, it be like that every time his baby mama call. He go out running and stay gone all day, Bam said. Fly White had a thing for black girls and had 2 kids by one that didn't play the radio with his white ass. Whenever she called, he went running, forgetting about business or whatever else he had going on at the time. But today, he was holding up progress. Kat had been blowing my phone up all day, saying she had something important to talk to me about. And as soon as I dropped Bam off, I was taking it in to see what was going on with Kat. Just then, my cell phone rang again, and I saw that it was Kat calling once more. I'm on my way, I said in an agitated voice immediately after answering the phone. King, where you at? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Kat, I'm about to head to the house now, I said. It was something about the way she sounded that told me something was wrong. She sounded weak, and at that moment, I began gathering whatever dope I had left and decided to just take it in with me, since Fly White still hadn't showed up. Let's roll, I said to Bam. I'll drop you out before I head home. I waited as Bam gathered what he was taking with him, which was a book bag that held 2 MAC-10 submachine guns that he toted with him everywhere, and about $2,000 in cash. I only had about 4 ounces left of what Fly White had cooked up before he left, so I stuck that in my pants pocket, and me and Bam jumped in my truck and pulled off. I don't know what made me tell Bam to throw his book bag in the back of my truck, but that's exactly where it was when a state trooper got behind us with his lights flashing as we were coming down Highway 78. I thought it was just a routine traffic stop since I was going a little too fast, and I pulled over and had my license in my hand when 2 big redneck cops approached my car on both sides with their guns drawn. Put your hands where I can see them. They both seemed to be screaming at the same time. Me and Bam were both pulled roughly from the car and then made to lay face down on the ground. We were both searched, and of course, I was handcuffed and placed under arrest once the 4 ounces of crack cocaine was found in my front pocket. A further search of my truck revealed the book bag I had foolishly told Bam to throw in the back. What's this? Asked the officer, who found the book bag as he held up one of the MAC-10s. I could tell from the look on Bam's face as he lay face down on the pavement that he was battling with the decision of whether or not to claim the book bag that he placed in the back of my truck. Our eyes met, and just as his lips were about to move, I blurted out, "That's mine too. Everything in the truck belonged to me," I said. There was no need for us both to go down, and since they had already gotten the dope off me, I may as well take the blame for everything. I was placed in the back of the cop car and transported to the county jail, while Bam was released and allowed to drive my truck home. This was my first time ever being arrested for anything. But when you out here hustling the way I was, you gotta always know there's a chance that it can happen any day. So I was more than prepared for the one thing I always tried to avoid. At the county jail, I was processed and charged with illegal possession of a controlled substance and 2 counts of illegal possession of a firearm. My bond was set at $75,000, and once they were done booking me, I was then allowed my one phone call. It was then that I remember Uncle Ronnie telling me that if I ever had any kind of problem, to call Red. But the cops still had my cell phone, and I didn't know Red's number from memory. So I called Kat, who had most of my money anyway, and she was on top of things immediately, as if she'd been through this all before. It took $7,500, which was 10% of the total bond, and in no time, Kat had the money and had arranged for my bond to be made. Before they could even take me upstairs and place me in a cell block, my bond was made, and I was once again free and back on the streets before the sun had even come up. 3 in the morning definitely isn't a good time to be riding through the Metropolitan Garden, also known as Central City Projects, which was in the downtown area, but not far away from the county jail. But I was determined to get my truck from Bam before going back to Forestdale. So despite a Kat's protest, I had her drive me straight to Central City, where I found Bam posted up outside his aunt's apartment building with about 7 or 8 other dudes, just as I expected. I've been to his aunt's house several times before, and no matter what time of the day or night it was, the project seemed to always be alive with activity, even more so in the wee hours of the night. "You want me to wait for you?" asked Kat as she sat behind the wheel of my Impala, looking at me as if she was terrified, and she had every right to be. "Nah, I'm good," I told her as I opened the door to get out. "I'ma just get my truck and I'll meet you at the house." King. The way she said my name made me momentarily pause, just as one of my feet touched the ground. I turned back toward her with 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the car. "I'm pregnant," Kat said, with tears in her eyes. I was at a sudden loss for words and didn't know how to respond as I noticed Bam now heading towards the car. "We'll talk when I get home," I said before planting a kiss on her lips and quickly exiting the car. "Y'all about to go to war or something, nigga?" I asked Bam as the 2 of us made our way to where he parked my truck. What I thought at first was 7 or 8 guys turned out to be closer to 20 niggas, and at least 12 of them had AK assault rifles in their hands, and a few were even wearing camouflage outfits. "Nah, this every day, all day," Bam replied in his southern drawl. "You don't want to see us when we about to go to war," he added. Bam tossed me the keys to my truck and handed me a roll of bills at the same time. "I appreciate that, bro," said Bam. "Not many niggas would have did what you did. You gonna always be a real nigga in my eyes, King." Just then, I saw out of the corner of my eye that an older guy had started making his way toward us. "That's my brother Freak," Bam told me once he saw the skeptical look on my face. "What up, homie? I'm Freak." He offered me his hand to shake. "I just want to let you know I appreciate what you did for my little brother. If you ever need anything, my nigga, just holler." This nigga was so black, I could hardly see his face in the dark, but his eyes told me he was a genuine nigga who made good on his word. You must don't know who King Solomon is, Bam said braggingly, the freak. This the nigga I been telling you about. Shit, he already got it all. Yeah, I done heard about you, said his brother Freak, who seemed to be watching me a little too hard. I heard how Central City niggas would rob any outsiders in a heartbeat. So for a moment, I felt real vulnerable, being out in the open with no strap. But Freak's next words quickly put me at ease. But regardless of that, Freak said, everybody gonna need somebody at some point. So when that time come, homie, just know, Central City got your back, folk. And with that said, I got my keys from Bam, headed to my truck, and made my way back to Forestdale, not knowing that that day was gonna come much sooner than later. Mariah didn't seem to notice or care what I had been into since Tez died, but my arrest on drug charges was definitely gonna get her attention soon enough. For some reason, I had the foolish idea that I could keep it from her since I had bonded out as quickly as I had. But I never anticipated that a letter would come to the house months later, notifying me that I was scheduled to appear in court. I staggered in the house late one night after a long night at a club on the north side called Chubby's, thinking of nothing but crashing. But that plan was put on hold when I came in, finding Mariah sitting in the living room in the dark. When she flicked on the light, I was nearly blinded by the sudden explosion of light that attacked my eyes. We need to talk, Mariah said in an aggressive tone. Can we talk in the morning, I asked as I attempted to shield my eyes from the blinding light. No, she said angrily, and she sat up straight and gave me a look that told me she was in no mood to play games. Now sit down, cause you got some explaining to do. My first thought was that she found out Kat was pregnant, a fact that was now becoming harder to hide with her slightly protruding belly. But the white envelope she practically threw at me told a completely different story. I knew you was into something, Mariah said, but this is just unacceptable and would not be tolerated as long as you living under this roof. I began to read the letter as she talked. It was a letter from the court letting me know I had a preliminary hearing on August 13, 1995, in Judge Mike McDonald's courtroom on the charges of illegal possession of a controlled substance and 2 counts of illegal possession of a firearm. I was at a loss for words, and there was really nothing left to explain. The letter had said it all. I continued to stare at the words on the piece of paper, while at the same time trying to avoid the angry eyes of Mariah. Selling drugs, King? She said questioningly. We gave you everything you ever wanted. I just don't understand. What Mariah said was right. She and Tez had given me everything I ever wanted and more. But it wasn't just about the money. The magnetic pull of the streets and living the fast life had drawn me in a way that was impossible to explain. But I must admit, Tez and Mariah had taught me some very important values that would take me far in life. But the streets had taught me a completely different set of values, and I opted for the latter of the two. King, I really don't know what to say to you right now, Mariah said. I'm just so mad I can't see straight. Mariah at that point stood to her full 5 feet before adding, and I just can't have this kind of stuff going on around my kids. The way she said my kids, as if I was excluded from the equation, had more or less confirmed what I had been feeling all along. And now that Ted was gone, there was no reason to hide it any longer. Her true feelings were out in the open now, and I began to see Mariah as if she never really cared about me at all. Maybe she was only tolerating me to keep Ted happy, but whatever the case may be, it didn't really matter now. I fixed her with a cold stare, allowing her to see the pain in my eyes as I walked away, went into my room, and closed the door. My mind was filled with so many different thoughts at once, and I felt as if I was suddenly alone in the world. With my court date fast approaching, I had to pay a visit to my lawyer so we could decide what would be the best course of action. Upon hearing of my arrest, Uncle Ronnie had given me the number of a lawyer who was supposed to be the best in the city when it came to drug cases. As I walked into the law office of Newman and Associates, I kept thinking of what Uncle Ronnie had told me concerning my present predicament. He told me that following morning, when I called to let him know what happened, that all slippers count. And at some point, everybody got to pay their dues to the street in one way or another. So I had to take the bitter with the sweet. No matter what lies ahead for me, I was prepared to move forward and take whatever came behind my recent slip up, even if it meant I had to do time. "Come on back, Mr. King," said Donald Newman as he broke me out of the trance I had been in from staring at his fine-ass receptionist for the entire 15 minutes I had been waiting in the lobby. "You got yourself in a real jam, son," he said as I followed him into his office. So Don, as he told me to call him, was not what I expected for an attorney. He was very down to earth and dressed casually in a pair of jeans and an Auburn University t-shirt. "So what I'm looking at?" I asked, getting straight to the point after being seated in a comfortable leather chair directly across from his desk. I put it like this. He sat up behind his desk and folded his hands beneath his chin. "Money can make the difference between you having to do 2 years or 20. Now, I wish I could tell you I could get you off scot-free, but the fact that you got caught with crack cocaine instead of powder cocaine makes a lot of difference. And if you add the 2 semi-automatic machine guns, I say you're looking at a minimum of 25 years. There was no way I was even thinking of spending the next 25 years of my life in prison. You said money can make a difference. So tell me about that and how much we talking," I said to Dunn, "because I ain't trying to do no 25 years. "First, I need you to understand, there's no way we can beat this case at trial," Dunn told me. "But I got a pretty good relationship with the district attorney, so we may be able to work out a deal." "What kind of deal?" I asked. "If the deal he's referring to involved me snitching on somebody, then he can forget it. A lot of niggas at the time was setting up other drug dealers for a lighter sentence, but that ain't me." "Hold on a second," said Dunn as he picked up the phone on his desk and punched in only 3 digits. "Lisa, get District Attorney Meeks on the line for me." Just a brief moment later, the phone began to ring. "John, how things been going?" For close to 5 minutes, I sat and listened while my attorney chatted with the district attorney as if they were the best of friends. He asked about the other man's family and promised him that they'd get together one day soon to play golf. And then he got right to the point. "So listen, John, I got a client of mine, Solomon King. He's facing charges of possession of a controlled substance and 2 counts of possession of a firearm. He's only 18, John, a first offender, and he's the son of a really close friend of mine. What kind of deal can we work out for this kid?" Don asked. He got silent for a moment, and then he added, "Yeah, I can wait." Don put the phone on loudspeaker, then placed it on the receiver while waiting for the district attorney to come back to the line. "He checking into your case now to see what they got," Don said to me almost in a whisper while he waited. Just minutes later, a voice came through the phone's loudspeaker that sounded like an older white man. "You still there, Don?" "Yeah, I'm here, John. What we looking at?" "Well, Your client pretty much got caught red-handed with right at 4 ounces of crack in his pocket. And he admitted to the officers on the scene that the guns were his. I already know that, John, Dunn said in an agitated voice. Okay, so you should also know that we've been coming down hard on offenders caught in the possession of crack cocaine as opposed to powder cocaine. There was a long pause before the DA spoke again. But if your client is willing to plead out to the possession charge, I could throw out the gun charges and settle it with a straight 10. Come on, John. You really want to send this 18-year-old kid to prison for 10 years on a first offense? And then Dunn gave me a look that said, don't worry. But the 10 years they were talking definitely had me worried. But the DA's next words had me worried even more, as well as puzzled. Dunn, let me be straight with you. This 18-year-old kid you keep speaking of has been involved in a lot more than most people do at the age of 37. He paused for a moment to let the words sink in. It seems that your King Solomon has been on our radar for several months. And it was just a matter of time before we eventually got a case on him much bigger than 4 measly ounces of crack cocaine. You must be mistaken, John, said my attorney, as he shot me a look that this time had me worried. My client's name is Solomon King, not King Solomon. I'm looking at the file, Don. Solomon King goes by the alias King Solomon, and he's reportedly one of the biggest drug dealers in the city at the age of 18. Another pause and another look from Dunn had my nerves on edge, but I was left speechless. But that's not important, the DA said. What's important at this point, Dunn, is whether or not Lisa is involved in this case or not. She can be, Dunn replied, as he gave me a conspiratorial wink, followed by a thumbs up that left me wondering what his receptionist Lisa had to do with the outcome of my case. Well, in that case, said the district attorney, let's say a mandatory fine for the crack, and I still drop the gun charges. John, we've been doing this for quite a while, Don said, as he began to seem a bit more relaxed. So let's cut the cat and mouse games. Make it a file with good time, and we got a deal. This my deal, Don, and it's final, said the DA on the other end. If you willing to add another 10 to what we usually do, then you got a deal. I may take some heat for this, Don, so it's the only way. Hold on a second, said Dunn, as he placed the call on mute so he can address me in private. How soon can you come up with $25,000, Dunn asked me. Shit, I can drive home and be back with the money in less than an hour, I assured him, still trying to process whatever it was they were negotiating about my life and what the next 5 years had in store for me. Okay, John, we got a deal, Dunn said, once he'd taken the phone off mute. I had Lisa deliver the paperwork to you by the end of the workday. When Dunn got off the phone with the DA, he explained to me that the deal he just made was the best he could get, especially with the new discovery evidence saying that I was the target of a 3-month investigation that I had previously known nothing about. He explained that I would be sentenced to 5 years, but with good time, I would only do a little over a year. But the bottom line was that no matter what, I was going to prison, and there was no way around it. This was just one of life's unresolvable dilemmas, and the only thing left for me to do was gather the strength to face the consequences for my actions. But until then, I had a lot to do. With only 1 week left until my court date, my mind was only on getting my affairs in order and making sure that I'd be straight while I was gone. Even after dropping off $25,000 to Dunn's fine-ass receptionist, I still had a pretty good stash of money left. I didn't have a clue how much until a few nights before my court date, me and Kat
sat in her room and counted all the money I had made during my short career as a hustler. Since I wasn't a heavy spender and hadn't been throwing my money away on cars and jewelry like Midnight, I wasn't surprised when I came up with a little over 500,000. Now that was a good bit for an 18-year-old, though probably nothing compared to what several others before me had made by that age. But I got in the game practically by accident. So that was damn good for an accidental hustler. Though I had to put my plans with Uncle Ronnie on hold at least for another year, he assured me that he had my back if I needed him for anything. Time dwindled fast. I spent 2 of my last 3 nights with Kat. Though she at times seemed to aggravate me to death about staying out the streets, Kat had been there for me during some trying times. And I could honestly say I loved her. The fact that she was not carrying my baby made it even stronger. Kat promised me that she'd wait for me, and for some reason, I believed she would. Those final days, we made love like we both knew it would be the last time. Dunn had already warned me that once I pled guilty, I'd be detained in the county jail immediately, where I would wait to be sent to prison. So that last night, Sunday night, was mine to ball. I knew this was my last time, so I intended to go out and enjoy myself to the fullest. But the night felt odd, because ordinarily I'd be riding out with Midnight and Blinky, who'd been my road dog since elementary school. But tonight, I was riding solo. I wouldn't say I had fallen out with Midnight, but the two of us still hadn't seen or spoken to each other at all. From what I've been hearing, he'd been on some real wild and out shit, constantly in shootouts, and had even started sniffing some of the shit that we supposed to be making money off of. But that was him. I wasn't doing nothing but stacking money all day, every day. It was a little after 11 when I finally turned on First Avenue, joining the long line of cars on their way to the recently opened club, Smitty City. Before parking, I first circled the block, hitting the switches a few times to get the attention of the many beautiful women mingling about outside the club. I was lucky enough to find a parking space near the front of the club and kill the engine. Music still beating loud as I sat with the door open and finished my blunt while checking my appearance in the side mirror. Joe Etheridge had given me my last haircut early that day and had me all the way in the game. Could nobody tell me I wasn't fresh to death, wearing a pair of navy blue polo shorts, a navy blue and gold striped polo shirt, and a pair of matching Nike Air Max. The thick gold herringbone around my neck accentuated my 6 freshly polished gold teeth. That was the finishing touch that drew the attention of 3 bad chicks that passed my car just as I finished my blunt. One, a thick Puerto Rican looking chick who seemed familiar, almost broke her neck looking back at me as I activated the alarm on my car and began making my way to the front door of the club. Now I didn't have a VIP pass allowing me to go straight in the club without waiting in the long line that seemed to be wrapped around the building. But the huge wad of $100 bills was just as good. As I passed the long line of partygoers on my way to the door, I caught another glimpse of the group of chicks who just moments ago walked past me. I slowed just enough to let my eyes roam over the well-shaped body of the Puerto Rican chick who was checking me out. Her hair hung loosely down her back, and the fire-red body dress she wore hugged her curves in a way that left nothing to the imagination. Damn, I said to myself, thinking how I'd like to get just one taste of that before taking my vacation. As I passed, our eyes met once more, and the familiarity struck me again as I nodded my head in acknowledgement just before approaching the door. The club was packed that night. I'm talking shoulder to shoulder, nowhere to sit, standing room only packed. It was filled with beautiful women of all shapes and sizes, and my eyes were everywhere at once. But a part of me was hoping for the slim chance to see the sexy Puerto Rican chick in the red body dress. I knew it was a long shot, almost like finding a needle in a haystack, and I was surprised when less than an hour later we ran into each other. I mean, literally, I was making my way to the bathroom for the second time that night when I nearly ran over a female coming out of the women's restroom as I was passing it on my way to the men's restroom. I bumped into her, causing her to lose her balance in the heels she wore, but grabbed hold of her arm just in time to stop her from hitting the floor. My bad, I said just before realizing it was the fine-ass Puerto Rican chick in the red body dress that I was holding by the arm. "No problem, Poppy," she replied in the sexiest accent I had ever heard. "Didn't I see you outside earlier, standing by the white Impala?" she asked. "Yeah, that was me," I replied before giving her a gold-tooth smile. She told me her two friends were waiting for her in the VIP. And since that was my next destination anyway, I told her I'd make it my business to find her when I get done with my business in the restroom. I would have loved to continue chatting with this beautiful creature, but by then, I was already shifting from one foot to another and trying not to piss on myself. As soon as I was done relieving myself of all the champagne I consumed so far, I went straight back to the VIP section in search of my beautiful senorita. I didn't find her immediately, but I did run into Frank Nitty, who had invited me to join him in his party. And Frank Nitty definitely knew how to party. The bottles never stopped coming, and blunts were being passed continuously. And it seemed as if all the baddest chicks had flocked to the same place at once. The women in the club always flocked to the biggest ball in the club, and tonight Frank Nitty was that nigga. It was like this was his own personal stage, and Frank Nitty knew how to work the crowd as if it was his own. And I wasn't surprised when he stood to make a toast. "I want to make a toast to one of the realest young niggas the streets of Birmingham have seen in a while," Frank Nitty began as he stood next to me holding a ball of Moet in the air. This little nigga probably made more money than I did at his age. And when he got popped, he ain't give up the plug like a lot of y'all niggas do when you scared to go to prison. And that in itself make you a rare breed. He paused for a moment and looked me directly in the eyes. "The streets gonna miss you for the next year or so. But while you in there, don't take no shit from nobody. Time will go by fast, and before you know it, you'll be back out here getting money like you never left." At that point, Nitty held his ball of Moet even higher and said loudly, "Long live the king," while using his free hand to extend my arm in the air as if I was a champion celebrating a victory. The feeling I had right then, hearing nearly everyone in the VIP as they repeated Nitty's "Long live the king" chant, made me momentarily forget that tomorrow I would no longer be a free man. It was close to 1 in the morning when No Limit took the stage and had just performing one of their hit songs when I saw a familiar face headed in my direction. It had to be fate that I kept running into the Puerto Rican chick in the tight red body dress who stood out among the many women who were attractive enough to make it into the VIP section. She had an exotic beauty, a body out of this world, and long silky hair that flowed down the center of her back. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen her somewhere before. I set my bottle down on the table where I was sitting alone, and our eyes met just as she attempted to pass. "Don't I know you?" I asked boldly as I took hold of her wrist, causing her to stop in her tracks. "If I don't, then I'm trying to," I added. "We haven't officially met," she said as she instantly slid into the seat beside me. "But I'm Priscilla, and I think they call you King, right?" She slid even closer
as if she was just passing by to see if I'd stop her as I did. King Solomon, I corrected her, without once taking my eyes off her curvaceous body. At that instant, it suddenly dawned on me why she was so familiar. This was the same J-Lo looking chick that Midnight's brother Ken used to mess with, who was also the same one who plugged Midnight in with her brother Marco. But I would keep that bit of knowledge to myself for the time being. Most of y'all dope boys usually run with a clique, Priscilla said to me. But I noticed you was by yourself when you came in. It wasn't a question, as she seemed to be really observant. Maybe I ain't a dope boy, I shot back before taking another swig of champagne from my second bottle, which was now half empty. And maybe I look green, but if you look a little closer, Poppy, you would notice that I'm brown. Her lips curled into a sexy smirk, leaving me with no response to her sarcasm. So what you going to prison for? She asked me. I got caught slipping, I replied matter-of-factly. But enough about me, let's talk about you. I tell you what, Poppy, you take me for a ride in that pretty car of yours, we can talk about anything you want. Her accent was as sexy as she was, and I was at that point hooked and ready to ride wherever she wanted to go. We got up from the table, and while she went to let her two friends know she was leaving, I staggered over to where Frank Nitty was and said my farewells. And within minutes, I was making my way out of the VIP with Priscilla's arm wrapped around me so tight, I had to wonder if I had pulled her or if it was the other way around. We made one stop before leaving the club. We both had to hit the restroom before leaving. I finished first and was standing just outside the door of the women's restroom when I noticed Midnight making his way in my direction with what seemed like 100 niggas trailing behind him. King, what's good, homie? Said Midnight as he reached out to shake my hand. I shook Midnight's hand, and for a moment, things seemed almost like they were before. I hated the fact that we were no longer as tight as we once were, but I still had love for him. And I was glad to see that he was doing good for himself, which was obvious by looking at all the expensive jewelry on his neck, his wrist, and his fingers. Never much, I replied. I gotta go do about a year for this little case I caught a few months ago, I told Midnight. Yeah, I heard something about that, said Midnight. How much longer you got before you gotta turn yourself in? Man, I'm gone in the morning, I replied in a somber voice that was brought by the thought of this being my last night of freedom for at least a year. In the morning, Midnight exclaimed in a surprised tone. Damn, you weren't gonna come holler at a nigga before you leave? What's up with that? I really didn't know what to say. Before I could even think of a response, I felt an arm go around my waist. You ready, Poppy? Came the sexy voice of Priscilla as she pulled me closer into a tight embrace. But after that slight and welcome distraction, I looked up and saw a look on Midnight's face that made me really appreciate the metal detector at the entrance to the club that made sure none of the club's patrons came in with any weapons. Oh, so now I see why you been dodging me, said Midnight, as he quickly closed the gap between us, now standing toe-to-toe with me. How you gonna just go behind my back like that? After all the shit we been through together? That's some foul shit, my nigga. What you mean, I asked, as I looked Midnight square in the eyes, knowing exactly what he meant. He felt that I was trying to cut in on his plug, but actually, I was just trying to get me a piece of Priscilla's fine ass before I went off to prison. Yeah, what you mean, Priscilla added, because I don't recall me and you ever being together. What I did for you, I did out of respect for your brother, but other than that, it's nothing. I thought it was funny how Priscilla was twisting her neck and popping her fingers while talking extra fast, and it was also sexy as hell. But obviously, it wasn't too funny to Midnight, who looked as if he wanted to knock her off her feet. This ain't even about you, so don't flatter yourself, J-Lo, Midnight said in a sarcastic tone that made Priscilla's entire face turn red. I'm about to roll, homie. I said to Midnight before Priscilla said something else that could turn the rest of the night into a disaster. I see you in about a year. Yeah, you do that, Midnight replied in an arrogant tone. I had my arm wrapped protectively around Priscilla's waist as we began making our way through Midnight's entourage of blue bandana wearing gangbangers. And I could feel his eyes practically burning a hole through the back of my head when I heard a voice from nowhere say, "What up, King? You got a problem with these niggas or something?" It was Bam's older brother, Freak. And with him was about as many niggas as Midnight had with him, if not more. "Nah, I'm good, bro. I'm on my way out anyway," I told Freak. But Midnight wasn't one to stand down to anybody, even if he was outnumbered. "What if he do?" asked Midnight as he pushed his way through the crowd to get closer to Freak. "Just know he ain't in this bitch by himself," Freak replied. For a moment, Midnight seemed to be weighing his options, and seeing that the crowd now seemed to be growing larger around him with all wearing black bandanas, he saw a game fight that could possibly land him on the losing end. "So you riding with the G's now, King?" he questioned me with a surprised look on his face. "Nah, the G's ride with him," Freak replied before I could even get a word out of my mouth. And to emphasize his point, he slightly lifted his black Raider shirt to reveal the butt of a handgun that he somehow snuck into the club. For the first time ever, I witnessed Midnight bag down. But who wouldn't have when damn near the whole Central City projects had you surrounded and you were unarmed while they wasn't? "I see you around, King," said Midnight as I just stood and watched my best friend walk away, knowing that if we hadn't already been beefing, we was now. At least in his eyes anyway.